Welcome to Sunday Live in the Garden with Aislynn. My name is Aislynn Campbell, and back behind the screen back there is my partner Joe Hilliard.
Hello.
And we live on Freedom Harvest Farms. My parents live out here too, and we spend a lot of time getting to know the best way that we can use this particular land to feed our family and to use that to also inspire many others to do the same thing. The name of the farm is Freedom Harvest Farms, and I think that the more that I think about that, the more that I begin to understand what this is really about for the legacy for my family, and that is learning to harvest our own freedom and figuring out what that means to us in the midst of inspiring others to do those same types of things. So welcome. Every Sunday morning, Joe and I come out to a garden, whether it's one of my gardens, whether it's another garden that we happen to be at on a vacation or something like that. And when we began this, we started in our backyard garden in Corpus Christi, Texas, and we have now transitioned fully onto the farm here at Freedom Harvest Farms. And it's been a great adventure. We moved out here in early September, and slowly but surely we are getting more comfortable. Now, all of that being said is that I'm just here to remind you yet again, if you've never seen this before, thank you so much for joining me. Know that one of my favorite places to answer free public questions and just give what I have available to give is here on Sunday mornings live. So feel free to ask any questions. I'll do everything I can to answer them on live and then jump back on and answer them later on as well. And then in addition to that, you can catch a replay of this up on YouTube. Now, if you're over on YouTube, you'll see a weekly replay over the last year of me being out in the garden, teaching everything that I'm doing in the garden with my hands in the dirt on a seasonal weekly basis. So this is about seasonal learning, and it's also a journal for me to be able to look back throughout the year from week to week and see what specifically I was working on and what types of things we were focusing on, seeds of planting, not just in our gardens, but in our lives as well. So this morning, I got to thinking about what today's topic would be about and what I could really focus on. And I'm constantly looking for ways to draw in not just the way that we grow our garden or actually work the soil, but how does that relate into our own lives and the things we're dealing with on a daily basis. So today's topic is going to be about making sure that not only are we receiving during this time, but we're also giving during this time. And of course that makes sense for the season we're in, especially if you're living in the United States. Then you know that we're in the season of the holidays and we're in the season of giving and receiving. Lots of events, lots of receiving gifts, but lots of giving gifts as well. And so because of that, I want to start for just a second and spend a few moments telling you about something that are coming up in this season. And as we roll into the new year, for my particular business, it's just Aislynn. So on December the 6th, I'm going to be launching a new 4-week intensive class. Now, December the 6th is going to be a live free masterclass, and it's going to be about my garden as a sanctuary. So I'm going to spend an hour talking to you about everything that I've learned about creating a garden sanctuary for myself in my life, whether that's an actual garden or whether that's just a space you've created to help with healing in your own life, and it's created a space of sanctuary for you. So we'll spend some time doing that, but the idea for that is to launch off a new series of healing intensives that I'm going to be doing out here on the farm starting on January the 2nd. So on January the 2nd, we're going to do healing in the garden, and that's going to be 4 weeks in a row of very specific to let's take our gardens and learn ways to create healing for ourselves in those spaces. And we'll talk about that more on December the 6th. That's when the live free masterclass will be. And I look forward to having you all in that. So if you're interested in that, be sure to let me know you want to get in on the free masterclass, My Garden as a Sanctuary, and I'll be sure to get that information to you for when we launch that off. Now on December the 11th, I will be hosting the second of a monthly series of beginners gardening workshops here on the farm. It's not just for beginners, but it's for folks that really are in the beginning stages of really understanding how to grow in a Zone 9 region, but not just in the Zone 9 region, coastal area of South Texas, but in a time where we're learning about regenerative agriculture and we're learning about regenerative gardens that are not only healing for ourselves, they're healing for our bodies, but we have a legacy and a responsibility to heal the land. And that's what beginners gardening in South Texas is about, is us transitioning our way into understanding what can we do to not only receive from the gardens that we grow, but to give to the gardens that we grow as well. We're going to talk about that here just in a minute, in a few more minutes. And then last but not least, we have another one of those amazing long lunch clubs coming up on December the 30th, and I literally have one seat left for it. So that seat might be for you, so let me know if it is, and I look forward to having you at the lunch table with us. It's become a really, really nice event. So let's get started on talking about today's topic, and let's get moving into seeing what we have going on over there. Now, the reason I talk specifically about giving and receiving is that you may have a brand new garden that you prepared through the summertime. If you've been following along with the work that I'm doing, seasonality as it relates to Zone 9, then you'll know that I'm getting beds prepared. And the initial phases of getting beds prepared means I'm going to put the freshest topsoil, I'm going to put the compost, I'm going to put all of the amendments to it, I'm going to put lots of good mulch, and I'm going to do a lot of tending with new fresh plants and new fresh seeds and all kinds of things like that. But after a season or two, when you've begun to get into your gardens are beginning to create their own system. They're beginning to create their own natural movement with Mother Nature, but also with you, the farmer and the gardener, to how you're going to add your particular side into it as well. And if you've been listening to me, you'll know that I'm teaching regenerative in a way that I'm ultimately saying, don't keep buying and putting materials into your soil, because nature can do that for you. But if you know much about what I talk about on a regular basis, then you'll understand that nature takes eons to evolve. Nature takes eons to balance things out. Nature takes time. And so a regenerative food forest permaculture garden can take anywhere from 5 to 7, 10, maybe even eons to really regenerate in a way that you absolutely can step completely back and let it do its own thing completely.
Which is why you need to get started today.
That's why you need to get started today, because it's going to take time. It's going to take nature some effort. But that's the great thing about having human technology and modern era of things that we can take all of those beautiful traditions that we've learned, and then we can take all of those great technologies that we can learn, and we can now get into the phase of life where we are now with creating regenerative ways of making it all work for us as we work together in this connective way. But that requires not only the desire to grow more and receive more gifts from our garden and to receive the abundance of the earth, it requires us to give to it as well. And so we're looking for ways to do that. And what a great time of year for us here in South Texas to do that, when oftentimes we think of our summertime as our rest time here in South Texas. That's when our gardens shut down. That's when we just don't have the growth, the seeds, the production occurring. But what happens in the north, a bit more further north than us, they use their shutdown time around Christmas, around the holidays, around the winter time. But ours is just a little bit different because we get the decreased daylight hours. That natural energy that would come in is decreased. So what a perfect time for us when we are beginning our early stages of gardens, and we are beginning our early stages of gardens sometimes 3 or 4 or 5 months before the rest of the country is beginning their stages of garden. This is when not only are we putting things down quietly to sleep where they need to, but we are also feeding them. And if you think about this, Joe, you can relate this to our chickens. When our chickens start to get cold, it's the cold season, it's the darker part of the season, but we want them to continue to lay because it's beautiful outside and it's going to be 78 degrees tomorrow and all of these things. We're still living in that natural state, but what do we do in order to get them healthy enough to lay eggs and stay warm in those cold nights?
You have to feed them more.
We feed them more.
The internal engine that is a chicken's digestive system is one of the things that keeps them warm. In temperate times in Corpus Christi, which is most of the time, you don't have to think about it.
That's right.
But when it's colder,
yep,
you have to warm them up a little more, and you do that through food.
Right. And because we're here in a situation where in the more northern climate areas, more colder climate areas this time of year, these would be when they were just beginning to maybe wake up in February, March, April, and then they're going to be growing all the way around till September, October, when things begin to go to sleep. We have adjusted everything a bit forward, which means that we're trying to kick off our gardens when the sun is at its lowest amount, when it's giving us the least amount of energy. So during this season, when we know we're going to get those 78-degree temperatures, it's going to be a nice warm day. Our plants are going to stretch really high for the sun. It's going to be nice. We're going to keep growing. We might have that cold freeze. We might have that cold weather, but we have a responsibility to help through this colder season to make sure that all of our plants are green. Their roots are strong and full of sugar. All of our birds have big fat bellies so that when that spring temperature hits, they get to grow a little bigger, a little taller. They pop some flowers, and then they stretch into the springtime. And when the spring, summer sun comes, it comes fast. And that's when we see all those tomatoes, those eggplants, those peppers. They're just coming on as fast as they can because we gave them everything they needed in these colder times of the year. We gave them all the energy that they need, and we gave them all the food that they needed.
Whenever you get excited, you talk with your hands, and when your hands are slinging around like that, Maggie's like, she's going to accidentally pet me. I know it.
This is Maggie the farm dog.
Maggie the farm dog, the best dog you've ever met.
So as we're going through our gardens, we are doing two things. We are harvesting. We're actually doing three things right now. We are harvesting, so we're planting seeds for our future abundance desires, and we are feeding everything so that it can stay nice and warm and it can get that pop of green growth. The roots can stretch deeper into the soil, and we can get these magnificent root vegetables, these magnificent greens. And then when all of those summer temperature, those spring beautiful, not the summer ones, those spring beautiful temperatures start to hit, the flowers just come alive and they pop for us throughout the entire winter time, and they continue popping through the early spring, and then we have the most beautiful gardens when we lay them to rest and to sleep in the summertime. All right, so let's head over so that we can check out what I'm up to with some more hands in the dirt. And what a nice, look at our nice little display. It's made a transition from the pumpkins and the mums of the fall season, and now we're having the beautiful colors of Christmas. We're starting to put our Christmas lights out. Now look here, this pumpkin right here, I can tell for sure is already going to be ready to be split open and thrown to our chickens. So don't forget, if you have some extra pumpkins, now is a really good time to find your friends that have animals on their farm. These are really great for pigs, chickens. They help our animals deworm, but they're also just a great treat to give to them because they also are going through those colder months, and we're wanting to make sure that they're happy and receiving everything they need to be able to be happy. Chickens laying hens or lambs making babies or whatever. We're not making baby lambs out here, right? By the way, not yet anyways.
Yeah, this season I learned that chickens' top 3-4 foods is not just the rice and cooked pasta. They love that.
Yeah.
But if I split open a pumpkin, they are in it.
That's
they love it.
They're eating pumpkin like crazy right now, and they're getting all the spoils of the garden. I went and picked up a bucket because I'm just taking over as the dandelions start to pop and things like that. That I'm just pulling that stuff out. Now, this
and giving
is a
it
good
to the
time.
chickens?
Yes, giving it to the chickens. And of course you could be giving it to the pigs and stuff like that too. All of your animals that are looking for green stuff to grow right now is a really good time, and you've got a lot of that green that they like. The turnip tops, the radish tops, all of those things are really good animal food. And so those are some good things to give to your animals right now as you're having the cooler temperatures and the shorter days. If you think about it, the sun is energy. And through the summertime, we get probably more energy than we really need, to the point of burning our skin and to the point of not being able to get some of the other things that we need. But in the wintertime, the daylight hours are so short that we're not receiving that same natural energy from the sun. That means that that's when we have to eat more hay, right? That's when we have to stuff ourselves with a few more of those delicious cookies and pumpkin pies and all of those things. Although we should be careful with that. As Americans, we have gotten to the point where we have got plenty of energy to spare. And we're learning more about that too. So you can see here, I've got my buckets that I'm using here with my seeds. My one big suggestion about this, don't leave this bucket out in the rain because it gets filled with water and that makes everybody sad. But I also have got another bucket over here that I wanted to talk to you guys about. And I think that this is very important because over the weeks, I do talk a lot about letting nature do its own. Let nature do its own, right? So I'm putting out the mulch. Joe, turn around right there behind you, and you can see that we've got a mulch pile. And I've got tree trimmings from the gardens and things like that I'm just laying out over here. Part of the reason I'm just leaving that there is because we have a water runoff issue that happens. And I'm trying to create some bulk where I can hold the moisture in the soil, create mycorrhizal fungi, mycorrhizal fungi is the mushroom that grows underneath the soil. And within that network of mushroom that grows underneath the soil, you begin to have the ability for plants to share nutrients. And you'll hear me talk about that anytime I do any kind of gardening courses or anything where I'm teaching gardening and helping you to understand how to regenerate your land. You have to understand that you have to have wood mulch or carbon in your soil to feed the mushrooms. And the mushrooms help your plants feed one another. They help each other. That's a connection that they're making, like the internet, under the soil where they're sharing information.
Mulch,
they're
mulch,
sharing,
mulch.
Mulch, mulch, mulch. That is the answer, always mulch. But in the midst of that, you do have to have some food. And what this is here is a bucket of food. And I'm going in to my garden and I'm filling back in. Now, there's different ways that you can do this depending on what time of year it is. And this is a good time of year to do mulching in your footpaths. So not just mulching in your footpaths, but actually fertilizing your footpaths. So one of the things you could do would be to take your bucket just like this and just simply pour it down your footpath and then take some mulch and cover back up over your footpath. But then in addition to that, you can take some of this as well and sprinkle it around the base of plants that you know are already existing. So I've got a tomato plant right here. Of course, I'll let you know, there's things that need to be cleaned up, but I've got a tomato plant right here. So I could take a couple of spoonfuls or shakes of this, kind of spread it down around here. I could go ahead and plant some kind of a cover crop on top of it. I could pull some mulch or some other kind of carbon. Hay would be a good example. Hay down around the bottom of this, particularly when we're talking about a tomato plant, because anything I can do to keep the roots of a tomato plant alive, even when we get our first frost that will kill the tomato, then I could potentially have the pop-up of a new tomato plant that happens really quickly in the springtime. Yes.
Now, is this an ancient secret?
It's not an ancient secret, but it is kind of Aislynn's. You know, don't quote me on it. You start your own and do it the way that's best for you to do it. But in terms of food that we're talking about, what we're putting out here, one of the things is that we do get truckloads of cow manure compost from our San Antonio. It's a 2-hour drive. And we order truckloads of that down here, 17 yards. So that's what I use to build the initial garden. So that's why when I say, now if you're talking about a brand new garden that you've just built, you're not going to be running into the same types of issues of not quite having enough fertilizer or having enough nitrogen in your soil, of beginning to see the initial onsets of the real insect populations that you're going to have and where the balances are, where there is imbalance for that situation. And when you begin to see that in your garden, in an older garden, that's when you go back in and you start putting in this food. So, of course, the cow manure compost has got a lot of nitrogen in it. That's going to help out with all the greens that I'm growing, all the lettuce, the spinach, the mustard greens, any of the flowers that are setting their greens now. And that's going to really help out with that. But in addition to that, I also have put in here some Epsom salt, which is the magnesium that a lot of plants are looking for, particularly when you're talking about those fruiting peppers, tomato plants, all of those types of things. Now, it may be that we get to the point where we're not in a situation where we really have any fruiting plants in our garden. If we get a heavy freeze like we did in February last year, or a heavy freeze at all at any point, we may lose all of our eggplant, all of our tomatoes, all of our peppers. But it's okay that you're putting that stuff in your soil right now, because when you start to put in the new babies next year, and when you start to put in that stuff is accessible, and you've already begun to create with the mulch materials that you're using in here, all of those pathways, and now your baby plants can then just reach out very easily and access the things that they're looking for. So Epsom salt would be my magnesium sulfate that I'm putting in here. I also use azomite, which is another mineral, and that's one of the things because of the runoff that we have here, because we don't really have any topsoil here. A lot of the minerals we don't have access to. Particularly what I'm seeing here is a literal runoff of everything that I've put in these gardens going right down into the Copano Bay. That's happening on a regular basis. So I've got to continue to think about how I can help add that stuff in here. In addition to that, I also add a little bit of seabird guano because I'm trying to make my flowers pop. This time of year, I am trying to make my flowers pop because I want to have some of those winter edible flowers that I like to grow this time of year, especially for the holiday season. So we've got lots of pretty flowers to put on our holiday tables and things like that. So I'm putting that higher level of potassium in here that helps my winter flowers to actually pop flowers this time of year.
So you'll make up a bucket of that mixture and carry it around with you and use it where needed.
Yep, pretty much. And then make sure you wash your hands, because one of the things that is you're digging in cow manure most of the time, particularly this is what we're doing. And in addition to it having been cow manure before, when I received it, cow manure compost, for whatever reason, I don't know, it's as if when you go into Target and all of a sudden you have to go to the bathroom at Target every single time you go to Target, like the cows think they need to poop on top of the pile of cow manure compost.
Oh, the cows that we have here that's become their restroom.
That's right. So like, thank you. They're just going right over there and
free.
Just adding their own compost to my compost.
That's great.
So if I'm going to dig my hands around down in here, I'm literally digging in cow manure. So I need to keep that in mind whenever I do that. The other thing that you need to keep in mind is don't take this and go, oh yay, and then sprinkle it out right on top of your lettuce or your spinach. Like, here's a good example. I'm not going to do it, but I wouldn't want to take this pile of cow manure and sprinkle it right on top of my lettuce and then go harvest my lettuce and take it inside to eat it, because that doesn't really make very much sense now, does it? So I'm gonna sprinkle this stuff down around places where I know I'm not going to be harvesting. So I might give a little nice sprinkle around here where I've put some new stuff in, just kind of, and that's really a tiny little amount. That's not even speaking about some, but as you're going through your garden, as you're harvesting and planting, you go ahead and put stuff back in here, right? Because I've got a pepper plant, I'm going to go pay attention to the ones that I know are going to need some attention, and I'm just going to give myself a nice little scoop. And I'm going to come down around the split of where they're at down here. I'm going to start to put some stuff, and I might clean up the area around it and plant some other types of seeds that I want to. But I'm feeding my plants. Not only am I feeding them, but I'm also making, because that's warmer. It's alive and it's warm, and it would be steaming. If it was really cold out here, you would actually see that pile steaming a little bit. Thankfully, it's not steaming a lot, because you don't want it to be steaming a lot, because then that's too hot for your garden.
Yeah, anyone that's had a compost pile and turned it has seen massive heat in the middle of it, because there's energy being created from what appears to be dirt. Nope.
Yep, exactly. So then one of the things you can do, and this is, not only is it important to feed this time of year because we're looking for energy, because we are harvesting from our gardens here in South Texas, but we also are trying to keep these spaces warmer. We want those tomato plants and those pepper plants to live through our cold season, so that in the spring they just are popping right away as soon as the sun starts getting stronger. So that's when you would go down through these rows, and you would use a pitchfork or a 4-prong spade. That's what I like to use, a 4-prong spade, and just kind of spade this stuff up. Decide where you want to put it. You might have another garden bed you want to use it in. You might just rake it up on top of some of these other spaces, depending on where you are in preparing your gardens. And then you would take a bucket of this stuff and you would just pour it out, and then you would cover the whole thing up with mulch. And what you've done there is you've created an increase in temperature in the microclimate that is around this particular garden, which means it's more likely for me to keep it as warm as I need it. One of the things that I've done here is I've put in these trellises perfectly where I could go in, heavily mulch down in these sections right here, and then I can actually put over some layers of plastic or some other kinds of sheets or whatever that will just help to keep the warmth in here. Also making sure that you're keeping things watered. So feed, food, water, and any kind of wind protection is what you can do right now to keep those plants alive while you're still harvesting and taking from them. And isn't that an interesting time of growing in a region that has this type of winter, where yes, we are having to do some protecting from the cold, but we're also in a place where we're gonna have those really nice warm days, where the soil and everything's gonna get really warm, where the plants are gonna grow a little faster, and we're still going to be able to harvest pretty flowers. We're still going to definitely harvest all those beautiful greens. We're going to begin harvesting all of our root vegetables, our radishes, our carrots, all of those types of things. So those are some things that I really wanted to make sure we're talking about: receiving, feeding. And this is, like, I tend to be one that gets lazy about feeding my plants. Don't get lazy about feeding your plants any less than you would get lazy about watering your plants, because they need you oftentimes. Now, if you'll go in, and this is the thing that I've learned about giving and receiving, if I'll go in and give to them, especially on a day where it's cooler like this, where the soil is wet, it's easier for me to move things around. I can go in and work a couple of hard days like this, where it's nice cool temperatures, and I can get so much done that my plants can do all of the work for the next 3 weeks. So that's the part of taking one little step at a time, which makes it easier for you. I'm preparing now for my birthday weekend coming up, being out of town, all of these events that I talked to you guys about at the beginning of the live here today, all of these things that are about to start happening, holidays, kids coming into town, people leaving, going on little vacations, all the way through the next 3 months, because this is a time of year when people like to travel and do things.
It sounds like you're using forethought to create a schedule when you know you're not going to have your hands in the dirt.
Absolutely.
Christmas is a busy time. Thanksgiving is a busy time. You've got to find a balance with your garden so that it's not this thing that's calling you that you're getting upset and angry about. Oh, you've predetermined the times that you're going to spend in it, and you've taken time to take a little time off.
Yeah, and I've allowed nature and my own internal needs and desires and healing to help dictate when do I need to be in the garden. And for me, one of the things I've learned is I need to be in the garden when I need the most healing, when I need the most quiet from other people, when I've done the most interacting in a space of conversation, when I've given the most is when I need to receive the most. So think about that in terms of your gardening as well. And it doesn't have to be always a 1-for-1. Sometimes I'm giving, but I know that we're about to get into a season where I'm going to be receiving. And we're working through this season all the way to the end of February, where we are in a give, receive. And then the garden's just going to start giving. And it gives to us abundantly for a very long time, to where we can kind of turn it off and take a rest and go inside and take a siesta in the summertime, and take the middle of the day to go do other things that we need to do with our lives and things like that. So that's what this was about today. I thank you all so much for joining me each week. And if you've got some more interest in what I'm up to here at Freedom Harvest Farms, I would love it if you check out my website, AislynnCampbell.com. You'll see I do do sometimes.
Speaking of do.
I do consultations, edible landscaping consultations. I can do homesteading consultations. I'd love to host you for a tour out here on the farm. We can take some time to get to know what I'm up to as well for a private coaching session. We can do Zoom private coaching sessions as well. I have officially started an apprenticeship program. I have an apprentice that's going to begin starting with me next week. So if you have any interest in something like that, reach out to me and let's see what we can come up with what is a good giving and receiving, so that we are both growing abundantly together. I love having a chance to talk to you guys all on Sunday morning, but most importantly, I love getting in the garden and getting my hands dirty. So I'm headed off to go do that now. I hope you guys have the best Sunday ever. If you have any questions, please just reach out to me, send me a DM. I love talking to you. See you soon.